Hi, everyone. This is the sign by sign look at the partial solar eclipse happening on the new moon in Scorpio, coming on October 25th. So welcome. And if you haven't already seen it, you might like to watch the previous video I did, which gives an overview, a general meaning to this eclipse. So although it's a partial eclipse, it's still going to be very influential. Eclipses are eclipses. And the nodes, the North Node, the South Node, or what is also known as Rahu and Ketu in the Indian tradition, are the most powerful things, even so powerful that they can obscure the lights in the sky. So it's always worth noting what is going on. So partial eclipse means that the nodes are at a distance of up to 18 degrees from the sun and the moon. So in this case, the distance is 11 degrees. And so it's still quite significant. We'll see a number of countries in the world that are directly under the influence because it will be visible. But even if it's not visible where you are, it's going to affect you personally. So here are my interpretations for all of you, for all the 12 signs. Go through the rising sign, the sun sign, and because it's an eclipse especially, know your moon sign, because the moon is always deeply affected by the eclipse, and that's your mind and your emotions and your inner experience of life. Very important to follow in these videos. So if you find this helpful, please like the video and subscribe. It helps me to grow my channel and spread the message to other people. Hi, Aries. This is in your 8th house. That's always a bit of a spooky house for many people, but you've had the South Node there since the beginning of this year, so January of 2022. So this is something that's already been evolving for you over these last almost 10 months. So what is going on right now in the 8th house can represent something to do with your marriage and issues around the earnings of your partner, for example, or business partnerships. Something might be changing there. That can come about suddenly, or it can be something that you've already been expecting or noticing happening, and now there's a bit of a turnaround in that regard. It can happen within the context of the relationship as well. This is about intimacy, so there may be something coming up in the area of intimacy in your life. And this, of course, because Venus is there, love and money will be a high standout feature of this eclipse. The 8th house is also about fears. It's where we have our deeper psychological wounding or discomfort, let's say. Of course, the ultimate fear being fear of death. And the 8th house is very much where we start to confront things that disturb our peace of mind. And so you might find that because it's a South Node eclipse, that you're actually able to overcome some fears, that you're able to shed some fears and move more in the direction of self-confidence. So for Aries, self-confidence is not often a problem. It depends on the rest of your chart. But it's not always a real self-confidence. And when something like this happens, when you really eliminate at the root some old fears and things that seem to be holding you back, that grows into real confidence. It's not any longer about faking it till you make it. It's really that you're feeling more bold in yourself. And I think also from mid-May of this year, you've had Jupiter going through your first house. It's just about to leave. It will leave 3 days after this eclipse, back into Pisces in your 12th house. But Jupiter in your first house is great. It gives you a sense of possibility and can do, which again is not usually lacking in the Aries world, but it helps to give you a sense of more fullness in your life. It's a whole new life cycle starting with yourself. But with Jupiter there and this South Node passing through your house of the place of fears and what might be holding you back psychologically, this could also be something that is speaking to that. Now, when Jupiter goes back into Pisces, you might actually realize that for the months of November and up until about the 21st of December, when Jupiter moves back into Aries, you might realize it's been you all along that's been holding you back. That's the 12th house of self-undoing, where, by the way, you've had Neptune since 2011. March 2011. So that will have probably brought you one or two issues around how you are in your own life, how you take care of yourself, how you are behaving in your own life that you're not really clear on, that you're not really seeing. Neptune in the 12th can also have been for you a certain amount of romanticism around faraway places and where you would rather be, maybe working with people at a distance. Now, Neptune is not all bad, although I always tend to first look at what might be problematic with these outer planets, because they do tend to bring challenges, but in a highly evolved mindset, then that would be more spiritual, adding compassion, and perhaps also being more drawn to spiritual pursuits and more of a high-minded attitude towards your life, however that might manifest, whether it's through religion or through some kind of other type of spiritual pursuit. But this is, I think, part of this message of this eclipse cycle for you, and meaning the cycle not just now, but the whole phase of Ketu going through Scorpio until July, basically, of 2023, could very much be tied into this, which is about looking at life from a less material perspective, looking at life from a less maybe hardcore perspective. Aries can tend to be really enthusiastic about stuff and doing things and the next thing and the cutting edge thing. And maybe you're starting to slow that down a little bit. And you've also had Uranus moving through your house of money and self-worth. It's there now with the North Node, particularly strongly since July. And so that also speaks to a whole new way of seeing money and stuff and belongings and what you value, and including yourself. How do you value yourself? Now, that's since the spring of 2018, so you've been working on that. The Mars trine to Mercury at this time is also speaking to a potential for communication or connection through commerce, through business, or just simply through shared interests, shared values, shared interests with people around you, and new potential business partnerships. So this could be that within the context of what you do, that you're reshaping your message, reshaping maybe your audience, especially if you're working on your own, and this will have a very clear effect. And so that Saturn-Uranus square, which is also still active right now, is also happening for you in a money house. So it's the 2nd to the 11th houses, which are both representing money. Saturn has been somehow putting the brakes on just general friendships and connections with people in some way that either is reshaping that or making you somehow preventing you potentially from really being in the relationships that you want in society, not with your good close friends, but meeting new groups and so on. That's been since December of 2020, so that's not new either. But now with this tension here, maybe there's something here shaping your friendships and your associations, including the networks of people that you spend time with over shared values, that is coming from a new value that Uranus and the North Node have been providing. And this Uranus-Saturn square has been ongoing for almost 2 years, so a year and a half for sure. You will have already been feeling this, but now very strongly, because they're still within a degree. It's still active all the way through October, and then it moves on. So we're going to find a bigger separation between the two planets, and then it's a whole new vista for you. Aries, hang in there. You've still got Pluto in your 10th house, so lots of dynamism in your career house, which has been radically shifted, radically changed since the end of 2007, beginning of 2008, and is up for a whole new shift as of March, end of March, April of 2023. All right, Aries, good luck with all of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, Taurus, you're one of the main actors here in this scenario of the eclipse season that lasts right through till July of 2023. You have the North Node moving through your sign, but you've also had Uranus in your sign since the beginning of, well, the spring, let's say, of 2018. So you've been changing quite dramatically over this period of time. You can't really help it. Uranus compels change. It compels things to be shifting in unexpected ways, which may have made you feel a little uncomfortable, because Taurus is, above all, looking for comfort and looking for stability, which Uranus, I'm afraid, just will not provide you. So hang in there. It's going to be interesting for sure, but you will find that you're growing immensely at this time. So let's have a look here where the South Node is in your house of relationship. This is really extreme for relationships. It's a potential for you to change who you are in relationship, potential for you to change, how you're feeling, or the people even specifically that you relate to. So a really interesting dynamic. When the South Node is there anyway, without the eclipse, it's already going to be going in housekeeping through your house of relationships. So you may have noticed people drifting away or moving out of your life, or it's you that's moving on because you're changing so dramatically. So you can't take the North Node and South Node separately. It's always a polarity. So here it's both you changing and relationships changing. And so the dynamic between the two is producing this. With Venus there, the message is even stronger. So this is very clearly about relationships. In the seventh house, Venus is generally very happy, but this time around she is on an eclipse, which makes her less happy and less effective, and also in Scorpio, which is a place that Venus is not super comfortable with. It can, in a personal chart, can perform beautifully. We need that archetype as well. It's the seductress. It's also deeply sexual, deeply meaningful. But in this particular case, it's in your seventh house of relationship. So that can also be that there's something that in your desire nature that's changing, so that it's like, I'm not super into this anymore. That's not the thing that makes me happy anymore. That doesn't turn me on anymore. This can be both in that individual relationship, but it's just in general. This kind of relationship doesn't work for me anymore. And so I see that as something that can be highly constructive for you. This is a life-changing period of time. Whenever the nodes go through important aspects of your chart, this is something that we benefit from enormous change. It may not be easy, but it will be restructuring your life for years to come. And so take it as such, as a kind of an opportunity for you to change and have a sense of freshness about yourself, because you are able to grow in this time. It's, able to grow in ways that you hadn't really seen for yourself. So this is, for me, a very important sign of the eclipse, and the thing that stands out most for Taurus. You have Jupiter that's still in your 12th house, which has been perhaps reconfiguring things around how you see yourself spiritually. That can be also issues around things that are far away places or people, everything that's hidden. So with Jupiter in the 12th house, you may have actually also wanted to sleep more, that you're even more tired. That's been since May. That's one way that can look. And Chiron has been there as well. So there can have also been some things that you realize about yourself and how you're behaving, how you've been doing things that are not really beneficial to you. Now, being a Taurus, you may or may not do something about that. So that's another question. Sometimes you need a bigger nudge. And I think you'll get that nudge when Jupiter moves back into this sign, because it's about to leave at the end of October, the 28th. It's leaving back into Pisces. But when it comes back into the 12th house in December, around the 20th, 21st of December, I think that's your opportunity to realize that some of the things that have been kind of not really taking shape or not really working for you have been your own doing. And this is an opportunity for you to resolve that until the middle of May 2023. So you've had Saturn in the 10th house as well, which has had you probably feeling quite a sense of responsibility and duty in life, perhaps even feeling weighed down by your responsibilities and duties in life. And that is going to continue right through till March. So you're still feeling that kind of tension building up between what you want and who you are and what you do out in the world, because Saturn has been squaring Uranus, which is in your first house, changing you all this time since 2018. And that is an opportunity, again, perhaps not particularly comfortable for Taurus, who doesn't really like change. That's this fixed sign energy that's a bit slower to change, maybe sticking with things too long. So this tension has been there for a while for you, a couple of years to say the least, and now it's going to be moving on after this eclipse. So you can see that also as a kind of a pressure release, a valve that's opening up, that's releasing this pressure in your life. So I think you're going to find that these eclipses are quite cathartic, offering you a whole new way of seeing yourself and your relationship to others. You're going to have Mars in your house of money, and that is until March, of end of March of 2023. So you will have this dynamism around your money and your values, something that you're maybe putting in order or something that you're doing around money. Of course, that's not new to Taurus either, where assets tend to be a focus in life. If not the primary focus, then it's certainly an important one. And of course, that depends on your chart as well. But certainly this Mars going through the second house will really reshape your sense of what is worthwhile, what is valuable, and also perhaps your own value. It's worth checking that out as well. You know, am I undermining myself? That Jupiter in the 12th house can bring you to new spiritual heights, but it can also, again, be a source of undermining yourself. So look out for that. Analyze yourself a little bit and see, you know, who am I hanging on to, or what am I hanging on to that is well past its best before date. And perhaps this will be an impulse to let that all go. Good luck, Taurus. See you in the next video. Gemini, these are interesting times for you. You've got Mars going through your first house all the way through till the end of March of 2023. And this has been since 20th of August. So you're feeling quite edgy and dynamic and enthusiastic, perhaps a bit grumpy. That depends on your chart. But if you do feel that sort of desire for change, this irritability or this sense of frustration, hang on, slow your roll, and don't go too fast, because this is actually a period of time where it's better to take in information and revise plans than to jump into anything new. It's never a good time at an eclipse period to start something brand new. It's okay if you're regenerating something that you already know and have done before. Just don't expect that the results will be what you think they will be. When you start something brand new, including relationships or business projects or anything that really matters, obviously can do creative projects till the cows come home, but just avoid anything that would have any element of risk to it for this particular period, because you will have a lot of complications and unexpected results. Of course, that can always work out in your favor. And you know, Geminis are not one to shy away from a challenge, but this is just unpredictable. So I may be projecting, but it just can be a little bit edgy. So if you're into edgy, do that. If you're not into edgy, that depends on your chart, then maybe you hold back a little bit. The eclipses themselves are happening in your 12th house and 6th house axis. So definitely something about health and daily habits. What is going on in the life around you. This can also be with regards to colleagues, people that you work with, or people who work for you. These things might be shifting quite a lot. The South Node, when it's here, is also reshaping that. Now, it's been there since January, so some of these aspects are not new. This is not an area that is like suddenly important to you. It's already been there in the background for you. But here, when we have Venus and the Sun-Moon combo, we're definitely looking at something to do with people or money, relationships or money, and that in the house of everyday work and life and habits, your schedule and so on, is showing up probably in your work life. Again, this depends on your personal chart. If it's a health issue that you've been ongoing trying to work with, this might bring some new results or a new stage in that project, in that circumstance. And this could be something really, really beneficial for you. So that's not to say that it can't be beneficial. You've also got your ruler, Mercury, in a trine with Mars. So it means that you're very dynamic about things, creative solutions to things right now. So that can be very interesting times indeed. The 12th house, where the North Node is along with Uranus. We're going to see more about that in the next video, where we're talking about the next eclipse on the 8th of November. But that's showing that there's some new way of seeing the world in general, that you're seeing yourself through a whole new lens, potentially much more spiritual, much more broad reaching. And again, this is since January. Have a think also going back till May of probably around your birthday of 2018. And see what was going on in your life around that time, because that was also when Uranus moved into that house, bringing a big shift, bringing a big change in who you see yourself as, or who you feel yourself to be, in that more spiritual way of being. Everything that is sort of behind the eyes or behind the scenes, behind the closed doors, is happening in the 12th house. And that also, it includes faraway places. So it can be something to do with having wanted to go away, wanted to travel, wanting to move abroad, etc. This can be something that is triggered right now at these eclipses. This desire, this energy might be coming back at you, a complete desire to change your day-to-day, make it look different, move away from this, maybe even just moving away from health or issues around illness that have been bothering you for some time, and just being done with it and wanting to change. So this would be a great opportunity to freshen all of that up. You have Jupiter that has been since May in a really nice part of your chart, probably helping you a little bit, bringing earnings from what you do in the world. But now Jupiter is just about to move back into your 10th house of career and social status, where you see the results of your ambitions in the world. And that'll be there from basically the 28th of October till the 21st of December. So a nice long time to kind of revise all of the things that you looked at sort of from the beginning of this year, or let's say last Christmas time, till the middle of May, when Jupiter was in the sign of Pisces in your house of career, and reflecting on those ambitions and goals. How did your career change? And now maybe there's a little tweaking that's going to be done, maybe a little kiss coming back in to see if there's anything that can be freshened up from that you can then bring out into the 11th house when Jupiter comes moving back in December. So a really interesting time for you, I think, in terms of work, Gemini. This will be a great period for you to changing, including your own behavior. Is there something in my everyday life that's undermining me, and what can I do about that? So good luck with all of that, Gemini, and I'll see you in the next video. Cancer, this is happening in the 5th house for us. I'm also a Cancer rising and moon, so this is happening in a place that's quite creative. It's about self-expression, perhaps a need to change how we express ourselves, a need to look at that differently. This is also about children. Where the South Node is can also mean something's changing dramatically in your child's life and in the life of the child within you as well. This sense of playfulness and joyfulness. Maybe there's a sense also here that you've been lacking that. Certainly with the South Node, it's showing up something that might be lacking or disappearing, moving on. South Node is taking things away in a way that usually helps us to grow, because we're either it's no longer relevant, or it's something that we are clinging on to and holding on to a little bit too long, and therefore not able to really freshen up. So this South Node moving through the house of creativity can be deeply inspiring in terms of that creativity. It can create a lot of space for something new to come in, some new expression. This can also be about romantic interests. So this is the house of love as well, falling in love. Maybe the realization of one way of being in relationship or one type of person is no longer working for you. And this kind of clean out has been moving through all of what I've just described. It's been moving through since January, continuing all the way through till next summer in July 2023. So you got a long time. It's just that these eclipse things move things forward in ways that are quite unexpected. And we've got Venus there on the sun and moon, exactly conjunct at 2 degrees, and it's 11 degrees away from the South Node. So this may not be such a super strong message. Now, if you've got planets there, that will be, but the overall impact can be very much about how you are expressing yourself and with whom, and are you enjoying it? And then, really reassessing that and doing something about it once you discover what's there. The eclipses usually are opportunities of real fast realization, or events having a fast pace that you will be acting on. If that's in the area of your children's lives, then that's also something that can change their lives. So sometimes we see through our chart, we can see what's happening with the people around us. And this might be something that suddenly changes in your child's life that is something that you indirectly relate to as well. The North Node is in the 11th house. So again, that's been changing your networks and who you associate with, how you earn money as well. That's the house that is the money you earn from whatever you do in this world. And so you've already had this period of time since January where this has been changing things up. And then Uranus, very close to the North Node for the last few months, is also shaking things up quite dramatically. Now, the next eclipse is conjunct Uranus, so I'm going to be talking about that more in detail in the next video. But this is something that is really changing who it is that you spend time with, What are your goals in life? Your goals are new and different. Your goals are changing in ways that you are either being forced to change, or that you are realizing, these old dreams, these old things that I was thinking would work for me are not working for me, and I need to change that. So Cancer, this is an exciting time. It's a pivotal time. It's a time where you're changing quite significantly out in the activities in the world. I see that as positive, although the change is always going to be a challenge. Change is resisted usually by most people, and so the more that you can get in that sort of watery ease and that feeling of, okay, I got this. You're also a dynamic cardinal sign, Cancer, so you can initiate things quite quickly. You can kind of turn on a dime. So this is the opportunity that you have at these eclipses to seize new opportunities, new dreams, new goals, new ideas of what it is that you'd like to accomplish in this lifetime, what it is that you'd like to do with whom, the people in your life. These are not intimate partners. These are the people that support you in your journey. You've also been having Jupiter in your 10th house, which has given a bit of a boost in some cases and not at all in other cases. And that again depends on your chart. Jupiter is, it's not always going to give the results that we think it will give. It depends a lot on its dignity. And at the moment in Aries, it doesn't have a lot of dignity. It's quite neutral, but it's also been retrograde. And so not really performing predictably, not really giving us what it is that we could achieve. Now, what's coming up is Jupiter is moving back into the home sign of Pisces in your 9th house. Now, this is much more beneficial. It's a short-lived thing because it's just coming back for a kind of a little remembering of what was going on earlier this year, first 5 months of the year. And it will be from the 28th of October until the 21st of December. Jupiter will be checking in again. It's about, what am I here for? What are my bigger plans for myself, my dharma, my plans for life and my role in life? This is also potential for teaching opportunities and learning opportunities. Maybe you're thinking about changing education opportunities or jumping back into something that you'd contemplated before. And then once Jupiter moves back into your 10th house, now it's going to be picking up speed. Now it's moving forward in a way that's probably going to bring you the benefits and the results that you were looking for with Jupiter in the 10th house, which can be quite helpful in career. It can be quite an achievement, an opportunity to really stretch out. Just beware of jumping in too quickly into things. Jupiter in Aries is very impulsive, and in the 10th house, not a great place to be impulsive, because you can do some damage to your reputation or your career by doing things in a way that doesn't make sense. So plan it out thoughtfully. This, I think, you're going to be helped with Mars in the 12th house over the next few months. That's there right through till the end of March. A great opportunity for planning behind the scenes. Mars in the 12th gives a great energy for research as well. So if you're considering writing a book, by the way, Jupiter in the 9th is also about publishing, communicating in some way, even marketing yourself, in some way, standing out as an influence or a teacher. And Mars in the 12th is supporting all of that. So it can be challenging. It can be psychologically challenging, might be stirring up a lot of deeper turmoil, inner turmoil, can have you a bit impatient where you are, maybe in your sense of spiritual progress or your sense of overall well-being. So don't take that to heart too much. Think of it as a lesson. Don't let Mars have you feeling down on yourself or irritated with yourself. Use it as an energy for change and transformation. Mars in Gemini can produce quite a lot of thinking, and in the 12th house, that thinking will come potentially through mental chatter that is really unhelpful, but also dreams and things that are a bit disruptive or restless that might have you feeling a little bit strange. So get the pen and paper out, write things down, put it out on paper so it's not hanging around in your mind. It's going to be retrograding at the end of this month. And so that can also cover old territory of the last couple of months, where you start to once again see where, okay, maybe I have been doing stuff that is not helpful for me. Mars in the 12th can also, this is the house of self-undoing. This can also show us where we have been acting in ways that are going against our better interests. And this is an opportunity to look at that again and revise. It also is great for, as I mentioned, research and analysis of things. Go deep, go really deep into life itself, go into whatever your work is, go into you yourself and start to learn from what you discover there. Saturn has been going through your 8th house, and it's kind of a similar message in that sense that Saturn is putting structure in this more unconscious part of your life. This is an opportunity for you to really experience some sense of, what are my fears? How can I overcome my fears? Saturn at the time of the eclipse has just stationed direct, so it's slow moving. It's still 1 degree off squaring Uranus, which is in your 11th house. So all of these things about Saturn in the 8th, what am I afraid of? What am I needing to change? What am I not confronting? What am I sort of sitting around waiting for to happen to me, where I should be taking action and doing something? That's all being challenged by this new framework of goals in life with Uranus in the 11th. This is definitely around money as well. So some aspect of earnings, money that comes from others, has probably been a bit thin on the ground. That doesn't mean that people are supposed to give you handouts. I'm not suggesting you're supposed to expect to be a beggar in life. It's just that when Saturn goes through the 8th house, where you get money coming from other sources, usually that is held back in some way, it's restricted in some way. But now Saturn is moving direct. It's going to pick up speed as it goes through the autumn, and something might resolve there. So you might actually have new resources coming in from unexpected places. And certainly you'll be relieved to know that Saturn will be leaving that 8th house, which has been psychologically and financially oppressive, potentially also putting some pressure on relationships, your marriage or a very important life partner relationship. That is going to be, that pressure is relieved as of about the 7th of March. And thereafter, it moves into your 9th house, where it's a little bit easier to bear. So these are really interesting times to make big changes in your life, Cancer, and I wish you all the best. And I'll see you in the next video. Leo, this is happening in your 4th house of home. It's quite interesting when you have an eclipse in the 4th house, because it represents our roots and where we live and what we feel is home. So that can be independent of a house, but it can also be a house. So this might also have something to do with real estate. We got Venus there after all on this eclipse. And so it might be something to do with moving, wanting to move, property issues. Something is shifting out of your life or changing in the way that it's showing up in your life. And this can also be about family, about the people around you in your home. That something is changing there, a new way of being in that family context in the home. If you're, for example, a student and you're living with other people, this could be like something shifting in that as well. Something is changing there. And this can also represent our psychological state of mind, sort of the happiness. Are we happy? Are we at peace? Do we feel mentally okay? And something here is shifting in that as well. So this can also be a real breakthrough or an opportunity that can show up something very new for you. So you had this squaring your 1st house and 7th house axis. These nodes are squaring yourself and others in your life, and that can be really intense. So there must be something going on that is changing how you are in these areas of life, and that includes in your career, by the way. So perhaps that what's happening is new career goals or new obligations in work are causing you to have to readjust your sense of self internally, your sense of, am I happy with what's going on here, or life at home. It's about maybe this need to realize that you need to step out more into your career and not be so much at home, or perhaps the opposite is true and you're realizing that there's too much going on in career, and now something needs to change at home so that you can repair or salvage what is being experienced there between you and others. So the 4th house is also about property, as I mentioned. This could be something of an interest of yours that you're wanting to invest in real estate. And all I would say is this would be a really dodgy time to jump into a new project, get lots of time in between you and signing the contract. Don't sign a contract on or around an eclipse. So within the days of an eclipse, it's really unstable energy that will not produce the results that you want. And again, it's not to say that you have to put everything on hold, but just be cautious and don't rush into something. Now, this can also mean that opportunities arise out of the blue. And if that's the case, you can certainly seize the opportunity, but take great care to read again, read between the lines, get somebody else to read any contract that you might be entering into at this time, because that eclipse energy is unstable for things like real estate deals. This, unfortunately, on a global scale, is showing up that real estate and housing prices, money markets, and dollar values and so on are very unstable right now. And so some people find great success in these periods of time, but I'm just, for you seeing this in your fourth house, I would just recommend that you hang off for a little bit. You are having Jupiter moving back into your eighth house, which is other people's money. That's going to happen at the end of the month, so from the 28th. And so if you do have some kind of prospect where you want to have a business partnership, or if your partner is in a position to gain, this will be showing up in November and up until Christmas time, basically. But don't forget that there's another eclipse coming up in November. That will be the 8th. And so that would be a period around those days, around 7, 8, 9 of November, again, to avoid doing any particular thing that might involve contracts or new engagements. Now, when Jupiter goes back into the 8th, again, that might be bringing some real benefits. And again, if there's been any challenge at home in terms of your family atmosphere and so on, this can also lighten that up, because it's in a lovely trine to this energy in Scorpio right now, giving some support. And so you might actually find some resolution. If there has been any difficulty there, when Jupiter moves into that 8th house, that can lighten up that difficulty, whatever that might have been. And then certainly with Uranus on your 10th house, all this time, that career is definitely changing, your social status is changing, your role in society is changing, and perhaps you're feeling much more dynamic in groups and reaching out into new groups and networks, because Mars is in that house, and it's been there since the 20th of August. It will be there until the end of March. And Mars in the 11th house is very much about deepening connections and being really engaged in community projects or networks or political groups or action groups, or just even groups that are interested in the same thing. It could be artistic pursuits, it could be any of those kinds of things. It's friends that are more casual, or people who give you support in business and what you do in life. Now, with Mars there, it has to be said that that can also provoke controversy within these groups. So Mars can be dynamic, but it can also be a bit of a bully. And so be careful that you're not overstepping your bounds. Leo, I know you love to show up in a big way. Some people don't like that, or certain contexts are more conducive to that. And it doesn't mean that you should not show up, because at the end of the day, you are Leo and you're here to show up. But it just means to perhaps tread carefully. And now when you go through this retrograde of Mars, and that retrograde, by the way, will be from the end of the month until mid-January, when that retrograde happens, there can be an opportunity to revise or rectify or go over any of these things that may have been happening over the last couple of months. And then it's all systems go from from January till March, when Mars finally leaves at the end of March. So it's a great time to get involved in projects. By the way, Mars in the 11th can also be that you're much more psyched. You're really feeling dynamic about new career goals, new goals for yourself in the world, new dreams. What are my new goals, my new hopes and wishes? And this is something that might be animated right now. You might be now in the retrograde period coming up, testing those goals. It might be about like refining that or deciding, is that realistic? Certainly Mars has been in a challenging energy the last few days, and it will be around the eclipse, so the days around before and after the eclipse, with Pluto, which has been in your 6th house of everyday life and work, changing that dramatically. And because of that change, this might also very much be to do with career goals or some kind of work ambition or work goals. So this is, again, going to move on as of March. March will be a significant change, which will allow you to really see the results or see some kind of experience that allows you to see that the work has paid off in some way. of changing, realigning your goals, realigning your relationships with people who you network with, and also potentially regarding money. The 11th house is a money house, and this can be something like, I'm making more effort now in my career, making more effort in what I do in the world to be more dynamic around finances. So this is another way that that can express itself for you at this eclipse, and what that might be can take on a whole new shape in a really sudden and dramatic way. And so certainly the house of relationship with Saturn moving through there has been under pressure since December of 2020. You may have found that you're distant from some people that you used to really spend a lot of time with, the important people in your life, or that there's some need to restructure relationships in a way that works better for you, especially, and for both of you. And then this is challenged by career as well, social status. So some of you are probably going through some rocky times in relationship, that this will be a lot better. It will resolve it one way or another. You'll feel that resolution coming through November and December. But it has to be said that when a relationship survives a seventh house transit of Saturn, it will survive. That means it's durable. It means that there is a lot that you've been working on, and that brings you the results afterwards. Sometimes the hard work is about investing in something, and it will pay off. So hang in there, Leo. I'll see you in the next video. Virgo, this is happening in your third house. It's a house that you like to be in, actually, Virgo. This is a house that's typically ruled by Mercury, which is your ruler as well. And so you're quite comfortable with this energy. There's something definitely changing in your environment, in your sense of the people around you, the environment around you. This is also about changing your goals, maybe having a sense of revising what it is that you're aiming for. You're perhaps at this time struggling a bit with willpower, struggling a little bit with a sense of confidence in yourself, maybe losing track of what was the main motivator before, maybe having a bit of confusion around that. This is a bit what is happening in this period of time, and it's designed to bring you to a new philosophy of life, a new way of looking at the world. And you're going to feel that over these eclipse periods coming up. This is a time to look philosophically at anything that might be holding you back in terms of your motivations and what it is that you wanted to achieve. It's also a great time to realize that some skills are no longer really adapted to what you're doing, and that might need to change, and you might have a new sense of sort of a realization of kind of moving away from those talents or skills or things that I used to do, these hobbies and these things that I used to spend time on are not really what I want to do anymore. I've just lost interest, or maybe even more to the point, I realize now that they've not really been serving me, and I need to spend time in different directions. This can also be very much about writing and creative pursuits around arts and so on. And so maybe you're also realizing that something there has not been showing up in your life. And with the South Node there, it looks like that can change as well. Now, that can change in interesting ways, in the sense that can mean that you're realizing that you need to do more of that this is not showing up in your life. And this is where that energy of sort of lack is showing up through this eclipse. Again, the opposite pole of the South Node is the North Node. Rahu is in your ninth house. And that Rahu is really looking at how can you expand your worldview? How can you expand your philosophy, expand your sense of purpose, your dharma? This is the house of the sort of path to your higher purpose in life. And something is expanding there, of a bigger sense of what is possible for you. Now, Virgo, this has been going on since January already, and you yourself have changed dramatically because of Uranus going through that house since May of 2018. So this is not new stuff, it's just a new way of showing it. This is going to be the theme for the weeks ahead. So take all issues, whatever problems you have, whatever stuckness you feel, whatever things might be sensing that you're feeling like you're holding back in some way, or not feeling confident in yourself, take it to the highest level and go into a more philosophical worldview, philosophical way of seeing yourself, Where can I express my life in a fuller way than just the nitty-gritty? The third house is all the nitty-gritty day-to-day stuff, moving away from that and towards something that is a bit more of a higher perspective, global perspective, religious or spiritual perspective on life. This is the salvation, if you like, to whatever issue might be brewing there. Now you have Mars also going through the 10th house. That's career and social reputation, perhaps some aggravation going there. Can be some sense of prickliness or aggravation in important relationships that are showing up in your particularly around work or career. There can be some competition as well. Mars is competition. Third house, by the way, is also competition where that eclipse is happening. And so this can show up in ways where you're feeling like maybe you have to fight for something, you have to stand up for yourself, or you have some kind of a little conflict perhaps with your higher ups, administrators or bosses or authority figures. You can be a little bit bulgy at this time. Now hang on, because this is happening all the way through the end of March. So don't burn any bridges. This is not the time to burn bridges. Definitely be dynamic. Don't burn bridges. This is in a lovely trine to the second house, Mercury. So it looks like whatever dynamism is there can also bring benefits financially. It can be contributing to potential gains in some way. If that's part of your active life right now, your earnings can be benefiting here from creative ideas or inspirations around money or around your career, whatever efforts you need to put in your career. You'll get a chance to rethink all of this, by the way. By the end of the month, Mars is going to be retrograding, and that's going to continue right through January. So you've got some time to go over old territory. If you did burn bridges, you then go back and try and repair them. And if you did have some incidents in the last few weeks, especially since early September, where things have gone a little bit prickly in your social life and your social standing, that again is an opportunity to repair that, so that by the time Mars starts going direct again mid-January through pretty much the end of March, then you will have a much clearer path ahead, and you'll find that you put your energy in much better uses. Equally, you've got Saturn in the 6th house, so that's been since December of 2020, and that can bring up some issues around health. That can be physical as well as mental health. Here again, taking care, because Saturn has been in this challenging square to Uranus for the last year and a half, and it is still squaring by 1 degree. That's a little bit less than 1 degree even. And so that's something that you want to just hold lightly. Don't take too seriously. Don't burden yourself. I know you have a tendency to take things very much to heart, take it seriously, want things to be a particular way. Now, Saturn can help you put all your ducks in a row in the 6th house, but it can also be a little bit too much. It can be too heavy-handed. And so I think you've probably had a challenging experience over these last few months. Issues of your everyday health, your day-to-day life and schedule have been challenging since the summer when Saturn went retrograde. Now Saturn is turning direct just before this eclipse, and you're going to find a lot of relief from this. So hang in there, Virgo. It's not been an easy ride for sure. You will find relief, and then you will be able to restructure things in a way that is much more constructive rather than destructive. You've also had Jupiter in your 8th house, so there's been a lot of energy around issues of other people's money, shared resources. This can also be issues that might, although paradoxically with Jupiter, stir up fears or stir up psychological issues. Now Jupiter is moving back into the 7th house after the past 5 months or so being in your 8th house. And in the 7th house, it can bring more harmony in your relationship. So you're going to find that as of the end of October, much more harmony in relationships. You're going to, again, there'll be another opportunity to resolve any issues that may have been there in relationships, tensions. A feeling of more well-being will come in your life. You'll feel that much more powerfully, particularly after Jupiter goes direct in the end of November. And then you'll have a chance to revise issues around shared resources and money and have more benefits coming from others from December through till the middle of May of next year. So hang in there, Virgo. Have a great eclipse, and I will see you in the next video. Hi, Libra. This eclipse is happening in your second house. This is about self-worth and a sense of values. What you value is very important to you as a Libran, but also because it's something to do with your money, it's very probable that there's something going on in your area of wealth or money and investments and so on. This can be coming from either your spouse, if you have one, or clients, if you work with clients, and the money you might get through them, or it could be money that you get from somewhere else that's somehow different, it's changing. And maybe now what you have to do is adapt to that. It also looks like there seems to be some kind of new way of looking at money, looking at material substances and wealth and what kind of stuff you have, and maybe losing a bit of that interest. It might be that certain things that held your interest before or felt valuable and worthwhile before are just no longer really interesting. And this can also have something to do with your eating habits as well, maybe the way that you eat or the type of food that you want to eat, maybe thinking things along the lines of, potentially, I don't know, losing weight. This would have to be, of course, in alignment with your own chart, or just getting healthier, for example, having a sense of wanting to change the way that you eat and nourish yourself, or maybe you're deciding that you're no longer wanting to drink or something like that. And this is just a change of heart. It's something that's coming. It's been brewing already since January. It's not new. But now we have these sort of leaps forward. An eclipse is always a time where things evolve quickly, change quickly. And so you might just decide one day to the next, I'm going to change my eating habits. Or this is something about your money. I want to invest differently, or I need to deal with this perhaps lack of money that's happening, because South Node going through the second house can also deprive you of money. That can be money that you have, that your savings, for example, might be diminishing, or you need to spend them in another area, perhaps as an investment. But it can also be just in general a desire to clear out. I need less stuff in my life. I don't want all this stuff around me. All of these things that used to be interesting to me no longer hold an appeal, and I just spend too much time managing them, cleaning them, organizing them, or just avoiding them. So this could be the time to really do a good clean out. And it would be really helpful for you equally psychologically to do that, because it would help you freshen up your sense of what is important, what is valuable. They always say that when your house is cluttered or you've got too much stuff, then there's something that seems to be blocked. And if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling blocked, this is a great way to unblock yourself. So you have Mercury also going through your first house, and this can help you communicate things that might not be so easy to say in other times. Mercury in Libra is very diplomatic. It makes things easier to communicate that even might be challenging. And because it's in this trine aspect to Mars in your ninth house, Mars in the ninth is very much about being active in the world, but for a cause. So perhaps you're also speaking out about a cause that you find important. And that can be as small as within your family or community, or as large as within the way that you want to see society be shaped or the world be shaped. This is something that is ongoing, because Mars is in that ninth house until the end of March 2023, and it's been there since 20th of August. So this is, again, not new, but it's new that Mercury is in this really favorable trine, sort of highlighting that energy. And so as we have this energy of Mars in the ninth house, you can really take advantage also on deciding kind of what is my goal in terms of my life purpose. And perhaps you'll be reassessing that when Mars goes retrograde. This life purpose can have some reflection, not only on yourself and how you might be thinking about yourself, but those values that I was just talking about. And you can really have a think about that, because this retrograde is really good for revising any ideas that may have come to you around that. And don't jump too quickly to decide something. When Mars goes retrograde, things don't always go quickly, but it's a great time to investigate, to study things, to analyze things. It can be a great time to get things done, but it tends not to show up in the world until Mars moves direct again. That can include studies, for example. If you're a student, it's a great time for students, because that Mars energy in the ninth can really give you a lot of oomph in terms of higher learning and wanting to learn, being inspired by learning. Mars in the ninth is also quite physical. So this might come hand in hand with your desire, if that's the case, to change how you're eating. And maybe there's a feeling of, now I really want to get into exercise. And so maybe you've started something already in the last couple of months, and you'll continue developing that until March. This would be a great time to start that if you haven't already, because Mars is in that really dynamic energy in the ninth house. Mars in the ninth is quite like spiritual types of fitness, if you like. It's like yogasana or tai chi or qigong or karate, these kinds of things that have a philosophical underpinning, but are also about working with the body. So that might be interesting to you right now, and then that will develop as you go through this Mars retrograde and then forward into the spring. You have Jupiter still in your 7th house until the end of the month, when it will shift into Pisces once again. It's been probably interesting in relationships for you. There may have been a lot of growth in relationships, a lot of focus on relationships for you since the middle of May. Now, when Jupiter goes back retrograding into Pisces, it will be there from the 28th of October until about the 21st of December, when it moves back into your 7th house. But when it goes back into Pisces, it's now in the 6th house. And so that again has this message of, what about my day-to-day routine? What about my health? How is my health? Is that working for me? Is it supportive to me? Now, those questions may have been answered at the beginning of the year, where you may have had a sense of something that can actually be super positive as well. It doesn't have to be that there's a problem with your health. It's just Jupiter is somehow highlighting that area of your life, or the way that your schedule works, or your day-to-day work demands, and so on. And so when Jupiter is back in that place, you might have another resonance with this notion of, okay, how am I spending my time? What am I doing with my life and with my day-to-day work and my day-to-day habits? Is that all working for me? Jupiter in the 6th house can also be relationships with staff and colleagues, if you have any, and that's something that you might find becomes harmonized again. Perhaps there was a brief period of needing to change, needing to reharmonize, and now you can come back and complete that task, complete that, or maybe you have a new colleague, for example. It could be adding a colleague or adding a staff member to your team, and that can include at home as well. Something as simple as getting a new cleaning lady, for example. You have Saturn going through the 5th house, and that's been there since December of 2020. When Saturn goes through the 5th, it is more challenging, although Saturn is in high dignity in Libra, so Saturn tends to work really well for you, but it is something that can kind of cramp your style. It has you feeling a little bit less connected to people around you, feels perhaps frustrating in terms of your expression and creativity. It can frustrate you with regards to children as well. So your children's lives might be somehow challenging, that has an impact on you, or it's between you and your children. Relationships between you and your children might be impacted here. So this has been, again, nearly 2 years. It will continue until the beginning of March of 2023. So it's a long process of understanding what you create in this time, how you resolve issues with your children, how you go forward to carve out the thing that you want to express. And that could include, by the way, entrepreneurship and business. Libras are great with that. That will really have durability, because Saturn gives you a stick-to-itiveness. It gives you this durability in what you do, and that's going to pay off. So bear with the challenges. Don't run away from them, because these are things that are cyclical. You won't have to deal with stuff like this again for another 29 years or so. So this is really about course correction in regards to the way that you express yourself, your creativity, again, potentially with your children. And even in the space of love affairs and just finding love for maybe younger people amongst you, or people who are newly single. You're perhaps looking for a relationship and it just doesn't seem to be working. Things are stuck. Things have not been really easy for you. You also have Chiron in your house of relationship, which means that there's been some wounding and healing there since May of 2018 that's been kind of triggering you. And it depends on the degree points where you have your sun, moon, or rising sign, but this will have been to a certain extent, challenging for all Librans. And Saturn is pointing to a similar situation, just a kind of a feeling of your heart shutting down, your heart closing down. So again, don't worry. This will resolve in a way that is much more harmonious for you, particularly next spring. And just keep looking for the lessons, not why is this happening to me, but what can I learn from this? So best wishes for you in this Scorpio eclipse, Libra, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, Scorpio. You guessed it. You're the star of the show here in this eclipse. It's in your sign. Therefore, if you have a rising sign or the ascendant or the sun or moon in Scorpio, or lots of planets in Scorpio, if you have a stellium there, of course, this will really affect you as well. This is a real reconfiguration of who you are, how you see life, how you feel in life, how you're acting, the way that you want to engage in life. It's all up for renewal. It's all up for questioning. This is something that happens every 18 or 19 years in your life. So you will just recall, maybe going back 18 years, go back to about 2004, a little bit in the late 2003, early 2005 period, but see what was going on. How did I change? What was different in my life? What was I experiencing that needed some kind of renewal, freshening up? And this can also have to do with your role in relationships. What did you learn about that then? And what are you learning about that now since January? Well, this South Node has been moving there through your first house, if you're a Scorpio rising, or through the sun. This is quite big. It's a big shakeup in life whenever Ketu goes through the important aspects of our chart. And so there's a lot of shedding being done. Now, Scorpio is used to that. Scorpio is very good at transformation. So it's almost like you're made for this, Scorpio. It's kind of what you crave in some ways. Scorpio is also known for sort of unconsciously seeking out chaos, unconsciously seeking out trouble in a way that makes them feel like they're alive. There's a kind of a sense of, I need things to be edgy, I need things to be exciting to actually feel alive. And so what you might not realize, Scorpio, is that it's you that's stirring up a lot of the trouble that you are experiencing, but you believe that it's happening in your life around you. And in fact, it's you with your stinger going around and freaking people out. So again, that depends on your chart. You might only have one aspect in Scorpio and all of the rest of you is in some really soft sign. And this is absolutely not your modus operandi. But nonetheless, it's worth bearing that in mind and reflecting on that. What do I need to change in the way that I am? What is my way of engaging in life that has no longer been really working for me? And that can include all aspects of life, because this is happening in your first house. This is the major house of the chart that reflects very importantly the pillars of your life. So home and relationships and your career, as well as yourself showing up in life. A big, big moment for Scorpio right now. You will have another, let's say, 8 months of this, because we've got this South Node in your first house until next July. So again, don't rush into doing everything. Change can happen gradually. It doesn't have to happen overnight, although very often Scorpios just like to be done and dusted with things. But nonetheless, this can be a slow-moving process, but with new inspiring ideas. And these ideas will already be coming at you. It's not going to be completely out of the blue. It's more likely being something that is triggered and needing an adjustment, or something that's happening through you or outside of you that is now calling for your attention. Importantly as well, you've got that North Node, the opposite of the South Node, always needing to look at the two polarities working together. That's in your 7th house, where it's also been since January. And more importantly, it's been very, very highly triggered since the summer with Uranus right next to it. I would still call this a conjunction with the North Node and Uranus, and we'll see more about that in the next video, which is about the full moon eclipse, the lunar eclipse that's coming up on the 8th of November. Again, very significant for Scorpio and equally significant for Taurus people. So here you're looking at something new and different in relationship, maybe a new way for you to see yourself in relationship, new relationships coming into you, a new sense of sexuality as well. This can be seen in the 7th house as well. All of this to say that there's going to be quite a change, a necessary change. I would say this is somehow the universe kind of pushing you along, nudging you along to change. It's not something that requires minor adjustment, but something that requires a big adjustment. You also have your ruler, Mars, in the 8th house. So I work with traditional rulers. I think they speak more clearly what's really going on in the lives of the different signs. I also look at the secondary rulers, the modern rulers, but I think they complete the story rather than telling the whole picture. So Mars in the 8th house, again, pretty comfortable place for Scorpio. That's the house that is naturally ruled by Scorpio. But Mars in the 8th, nonetheless, is going to put some pressure on marriage, on shared resources, on areas of potential cooperation that can also be income coming from your spouse, for example. There may be tensions around that, money that comes from other sources. There may be some disputes, for example, if there's any inheritance or some payout or an insurance payout or something like that, taxes and this kind of thing. There may be some back and forth there because Mars is always about some kind of action required or discord potentially. This will resolve itself probably in January when Mars starts moving direct again. But in the meantime, as Mars moves retrograde from the end of the month, so just after this eclipse, Mars is going to be starting to go backwards over some territory that it has covered already since the beginning of September. So you might have an opportunity to rectify things and review things that have been going on since then. The 8th house is shared resources in every way. So there can be some tension around just like who gets the stuff, or are you paying your share? Are you paying your way? Is this fair? And the other aspect of your chart that really jumps out at me is that Saturn is in the 4th house. So just to complete this tale of edginess, because we're talking about the 4th house, one of the pillars of the chart. Saturn in the 4th is really about re-establishing a foundation for your life. It's about, is this foundation working for me, and am I going to be able to lean on this foundation that I'm creating since December 2020 going forward for another 14 to 28 years? This is quite a big deal. It's foundational in your chart, and so it's setting you up in many ways, psychologically as well as materially, including where do I live? And all of those questions are now going to take on an extra meaning as Saturn is actually stationing direct on the 23rd, just a couple of days before this eclipse. That means it's very slow, very powerful. By the way, so is Mars, your ruler, could be feeling very edgy with this Saturn and Mars being very, very slow. And as Saturn starts to pick up speed and move forward, I think you'll find some of the more testing questions or perhaps long-standing questions are going to find a resolution, and that will be between now and the beginning of March. So use these eclipses where you feel like you're being propelled forward into something new, where ideas can come very rapidly, where things can change very rapidly. Use that energy to make those changes that you realize are going to be long-lasting and necessary for your own well-being. Your secondary leader, or what we could call the modern ruler of Scorpio, is in the 3rd house of communication, and your neighbors, your environment, your siblings as well. That may have come with its own challenges and lots of disruption and change since the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. With Pluto moving through there, you've probably moved a few times. You've probably had a lot of comings and goings with the people in your life, like cousins and siblings, or maybe they have had quite a lot of change in that aspect of life. And so this is really potentially also the way that you learn new skills, new communications, new ways of expressing yourself that may have changed, potentially becoming more powerful. That would be a great result. Your words can be very, very powerful when Pluto's in the 3rd house, hopefully for good. And so this is something that is also being triggered by this eclipse, because Pluto is aspected in so many ways during this eclipse. It's squaring Mercury. So again, maybe just check how you speak, how you're wording things, the way that you think about things as well. Certain things might be very forceful, might be very impactful. You might be even thinking more along the lines of more sort of high-minded things rather than the sort of everyday things that were preoccupying you before. With Mercury in the 12th house, it might be much more kind of feeling that you're sometimes escaping into your thoughts or not really clear about that. And so potentially with this square that's building here between Mercury and Pluto, there can be this moment of realizing that it's like a trigger. Oh, wow, wait, stop it. Pull yourself back, get back to reality. Let's wake up to what's really going on here. And all of this eclipse is squaring that Pluto as well. It's a strange sort of slightly out of sign square, but it's still within an orb of about 5 degrees. And because Pluto is slow moving and because it's the modern ruler of Scorpio, I want to just point that out. And so this can feel quite tense. It can feel like something needs resolution now, urgently. And that resolution will certainly come, especially by the time of your birthday season. I think you're going to find by the end, let's say, of your birthday season, you're going to find some resolution to that, whatever that tension is around the third house issues. You also have Jupiter and Chiron moving through your house of health and everyday life. It's moving ever so slowly right now because it's retrograding very, very slowly back into Pisces, which it will do just after this eclipse. It will eventually come back into Aries. That will be in December, 21st of December. So you have this period of time now where Jupiter will be in your 5th house in a lovely trine to you and whatever's in your sign. And that Jupiter is going to uplift you. I think it's going to give you some optimism, maybe a sense of ease, perhaps with your children, or a sense of ease around whatever makes you happy. Maybe some feeling of good luck, good fortune popping up. And then when Jupiter moves back into the 6th house, then you'll see also that your day-to-day life starts to change. So that will be sort of towards the end of the year in the holiday season. Jupiter will move through your 6th house all the way through till the middle of May. And that brings you quite a lot of opportunities to improve your day-to-day life, change your schedule, change your work. How does that look for you? And so any things, those aspects of your life that you want modified, all the things that you feel edgy about right now, that is something that you can change, particularly in 2023. And up until then, it might be just more about parsing out the in the beginning, the things that you don't want, rather than being able to act upon the things that you do want. But don't let that stop you from getting the ball rolling, because something in here is asking you to do that in a major way for your life to move forward in the decades ahead, not just the years ahead. Good luck with all of that, Scorpio, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, Sagittarius. This solar eclipse is happening in your 12th house. It's always a bit of an odd house for some people to get their minds around. It's a place where we can feel life rather than see it really happening. Often where things happen through the 12th house, it's where it's a bit hidden from us. It can be literally hidden from us because we're not aware. It might be sort of like the shadow aspects of our life, or things that are coming up through our unconscious mind, but it also is hidden because it's not at home, for example. It's not where we are able to see things around, like somebody who's away convalescing in hospital, for example, or on a retreat. That's far away in the 12th house. It's also places that are far away. It's people and distant lands that you might want to travel to. And so there might be something here coming up in the area of long distance relationships or travel, a desire to go far away, or a desire to escape life. Now, this has been something brewing since January. So there's definitely something shifting. Well, you changed massively in the year before, or the year and a half before. You changed substantially in how you saw yourself and how you engaged in life, especially in relationships. Now the question is more with regards to how you feel about all that. And that can come through the health axis, which is about sort of mental, emotional healing as well as your physical healing. This is quite important because you're sort of rebalancing what the outer life looks like compared to what the inner life looks like. And with the South Node eclipse here happening in this 12th house for you, it's definitely something that is shedding. You're letting go of certain things. This could actually be also that you had projects or plans to go abroad, and that's now changing, or it's you're just not interested anymore. Or there might have even been something that you were interested in doing in terms of a retreat or a particular way of looking at life, and now it's like, I'm not sure about that anymore. And maybe you're starting to cultivate a different way of looking at all of those things. Nonetheless, this is going to be something that you're going to feel quite personally. It can also be that you feel like you're shifting away from certain relationships as well. There's a kind of a feeling of being potentially even freed from relationships that maybe have been challenging for you, or freed from, let's say, the illusion of some relationships. Sometimes relationships appear to be better than they have actually been in real life. And so with Sagittarius's tendency to sort of paint a smiley face on things, there can be this tendency to not really see what is going wrong and wanting to see things going better, going right. The Mars in the house of relationship that's been there since 20th of August and going to be there, by the way, until the end of March next year. That's also probably been egging you on in relationship, perhaps creating some tensions in relationship, some potentially intensity that can also be quite pleasant in the sense of desire nature, maybe dating, working out a little bit better for you, especially since you've had Jupiter in the 5th house, which is your ruler, by the way, in the house of dating, in the house of finding new love and so on, fun and all those things. But Jupiter has not been super helpful in the last few months. And I think you won't find it helpful until the end of this year. So you may have yourself felt a bit stuck where you're turning around and around in those areas. That can also include children. Do you want children? Are you thinking about that? Is there something going on in the lives of your children that requires some more of your attention? And this also suggests with Chiron there that there can have been some issues around that, or some issues that might be even around your own creativity or self-expression, that maybe you're starting to discover ways of expressing yourself through artwork or through other means of expressing yourself, theater, for example. That is now almost like a healing for you. It's like healing your past. With Chiron there, it's often healing a self-belief, something that may have been holding us back. And so you can enjoy maybe exploring that. Well, Jupiter is in this trine relationship with your 1st house. Jupiter is going to go backwards into your 4th house. It was in your 4th house from the beginning of this year until about the middle of May. And then it moved into your 5th house. So you're going to go back over a few things that were happening, especially around April and May, and maybe revise certain things, or maybe reflect on them, or maybe opportunities that came up at that time will come back to you. This is particularly in the 4th house, which might represent home in terms of your physical home, your sense of where do I live? Do I want to live there? Is that working for me? Or it could also be just that feeling of being at home, having a sense of being at home in your own skin. Psychologically, it can be a very positive time. Jupiter in Pisces is very strong. Pisces is also ruled by Jupiter. And you've had your that home placement, that 4th house placement has been where Neptune is traveling since 2011. So there may have been some delusions or disillusionment around home, around family, around roots, loss potentially as well there that you've had to grapple with. And so Jupiter can come back and maybe make a bit of sense around that as well before finally clearing out for the last time until 12 years from now, when it will come back in. I think this is a really interesting opportunity as well for you to change your day-to-day. This has certainly been brewing since the beginning of the year, changing what your schedule looks like, making sure your health is under good auspices, and that you're taking care of from the practical point of view what your health looks like. Jupiter ruling the 1st house tends to represent good health. So I'm not suggesting that there might be some problems, but anything that might do, it can be about the nitty-gritty of the day. Like, am I overworking? Am I doing too much? And the fact that you've had, on top of that, Uranus moving through that placement since May of 2018 suggests that a lot has changed around that as well. The everyday stuff has changed dramatically in your life. That might be that you've got a new job, or that the schedule has changed, or you had kids before that demanded a lot of your day-to-day time, and now they've moved out, or stuff that will change in that sense. That is now really being highlighted by these eclipses, particularly the next one coming on the 8th of November, which I'll talk about in another video. But already now we're seeing that this is something to consider, to pay attention to. And this also is in a square, kind of a challenging energy with Saturn, which is in your 3rd house of communications, potentially siblings as well, cousins, your neighbors, your environment. Saturn in the third house can actually be quite supportive because it can be about getting yourself organized in practical ways, getting yourself organized around the day-to-day stuff of life. That can also have you thinking more clearly. It can have you responding ever so slightly slower to life, which, you know, Sagittarius hates to do because they love jumping in. But sometimes it's better to put the brakes on and respond a bit slower. You're coming into a phase now for the next 3 years where you're going to be re-establishing a foundation for life. You're re-establishing how you live in all ways. That's going to be quite physical in terms of where you live, how that looks for you, but also psychologically, you know, have I adjusted to what I want to be in this life and how I want to feel in this life? And so that energy of Saturn right now is being challenged by your day-to-day habits and your health potentially. By the way, this can also include colleagues, issues around colleagues or new colleagues or staff as well, if you have that, if you're an employer rather. And so this is something that might be challenging you in that way. Saturn is also in the house of commerce. The third house is about business and commerce. So if any of you are working for yourselves, or if you have a business of any kind, then that can also mean that there's been some investment required or some hurdles to cross to maybe get yourself better organized or have to re-examine the business model or something like that, where Saturn is asking you to get really clear on that. It looks like Jupiter's been helping with that though, so I'm not so sure that that's been necessarily a problem, except that lately, since the summer, for sure, that might have felt like a delay. So I think all in all, you're looking at much more of a behind the scenes kind of preparation for what is really important for you to change going forward. This has a lot to do with setting the stage for your life to be better and more aligned with how you'd like to live it. So have a great eclipse, Sagittarius, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Capricorn, this eclipse is happening in your 11th house. This is goals and dreams and your wishes for the future. It's also money that you earn from whatever it is that you do. It's friends as well. But because we've got the South Node here, something's changing. You're letting go. Maybe it's a sense of things being shed, things being, you know, it's time to move on from that goal, that desire that I had no longer interests me. Maybe it's about certain relationships. It's like, I really don't feel comfortable around those people anymore, or don't align with them, or they've simply moved away. Maybe it's, you know, people moving away physically that you don't see them as much anymore. And this can bring that sudden change, that sudden realization of what is going on there. When it comes from a personal place, and especially involving Venus, it's probably much more to do with your desires, though. I think if you think of it from in terms of what it is that you want out of life, questioning your goals at this time is really, really helpful. It's something that you've not really been super clear on since 2011 because you've had Neptune in that house of goals. But it's definitely a place where you should be putting some attention between now and July of next year. How do I want to change my goals? How do I want to move towards some perhaps more aligned with my self-expression, aligned with who I really am, rather than maybe following a goal that I've had for quite some time that is kind of past its best before date. Your ruler, Saturn, is in your second house. Your second house is ruled by Aquarius, so that's already a good placement for Saturn. I work with the traditional rulerships, and Saturn rules Aquarius. And so we have this energy of perhaps slowing down your income, or in some ways Saturn has caused you to invest maybe more, or put your income and your wealth and your resources, what you own, all that stuff that you treasure, you know, it can be bonds, it can be material goods, all of that seems to have been a little bit restricted or needing some kind of attention, needing some kind of order, really for almost 2 years now. It's going to be there until March. The 7th of March 2023 is when it moves out of that placement. So you do have quite a lot of buildup right now to get that momentum going. If you found you've been stuck since the summer while Saturn was retrograde, now is the time where things can start to kind of move forward in a logical way, which you will very much appreciate, Capricorn, and having a sense of order once again. And any type of restriction when Saturn goes through the second house is going to be felt by people who have not really been well prepared. This can be quite the opposite effect for people who have been very well prepared. And so if you've been lining your ducks up in a row for many, many years, then Saturn is actually going to give you a big payoff by being in the second house. So it's definitely not to be feared. It depends on what Saturn means to each sign, how it responds, and certainly how you've been organizing your life. Now, obviously, you have to see your natal chart to be able to know where you are on that spectrum, but nonetheless, this doesn't have to be bad. So Saturn in the second house can actually be extremely good for making the right choices, because it slows you down to get very grounded and common sense ideas around investment, around money, around what to do with your wealth, how to take care of your wealth going forward. Equally, because that's also a money house, and the 11th house where the eclipse is happening is also a money house, I think this has quite a lot to do for you in terms of that. It's something that maybe you used to do with your money, now you're no longer doing. Maybe you were into Bitcoin, now you're no longer into Bitcoin, or you weren't into Bitcoin, now you are into Bitcoin, or something like that, or whatever. It can be anything on that range. Obviously, money markets are all over the place and very volatile right now. So everything is possible. So the other aspect is that Mars, which is really good for you, Capricorn, Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and therefore Mars really tends to give you good effects. And again, it depends on your chart, because it'll depend whether it's daytime or nighttime, etc. Same thing for Saturn. Mars is in your 6th house. That means you're very busy. You've been working really hard. That is not unusual for Capricorn, to say the least. But at the same time, Mars going through that place is going to be potentially also drawing some issues around health, or something to do with colleagues and the co-workers, and potentially employees if you have them, staff even at home. There can be some issues there that create some conflict. And Mars in the 6th also, I always ask people to pay attention to inflammatory conditions. And in this case, because Mars is there for 7 months, definitely take care of particularly chronic inflammation. And that shows up in areas like being overweight, having aches and pains in the body, having a lot of mucus, getting sick very frequently, headaches. All these kinds of chronic issues are from an underlying inflammatory condition. So when Mars goes through the 6th house, I think it's really important to keep that in mind. And definitely also just scale it back if you have to have conversations with staff and so on, that you might tend to be a bit more aggressive than you hope to be, or that they might be, and you need to step in and step up your game. So it's again up to the individual chart to determine that. But the other aspect of your chart that's been very interesting for you is having the polar opposite of the south node, the north node, which always works in tandem in your 5th house of children. And you've got Uranus there as well for a very long time already. Since the spring of 2018, Uranus has been there, changing what is going on in the life of your children and in your relationship with your children, and potentially also your creativity and if you're an entrepreneur, particularly your business, for example. And that also is about what you enjoy, maybe doing things that you have been enjoying, that's changing that up. And the north node there is adding quite a lot more to it. So there's a lot of stuff happening in that area of your life. The children, if you're single, well, who knows, maybe if you're not, there's a love interests that are potential as well. Anyway, so these kinds of things, what makes you happy? What is it that brings joy in your life? All the fun stuff. This is gambling as well with Uranus in there. It's anybody's guess. Capricorn is always a bit wise with their money though, so I'm not so sure that you'd lose the whole house. So if you do gamble, obviously make sure that you are ready to lose what you gamble, and that would be okay with you. With the 4th house representing family and yourself and your emotional life, your psychological life, there you've had a little bit of a boost with Jupiter there, but that can also mean that there's been a lot of attention in that domain, and that's been since May. This is also, where do you live? The house, the actual home, physical home, but also that feeling of home. So quite a lot of energy there. And since Chiron has been there, which is about potentially sort of healing old wounds around where do I live, around home, around family, including family roots and lineage and so on. I think there's been some stuff triggered there since the spring of 2018. It depends on your degrees within Capricorn, how this might pan out for you, but that's been squaring yourself, your other planets. And so there's definitely been some potential for you to find a need to heal from things like that, childhood issues, issues around your mother, and so on. Perhaps there's also been quite a lot of attention placed on your mother in this year, since May particularly. Now, Jupiter is going to be moving into your third house. I'll speak more about that in the next video, but Jupiter in the third house is going to take some of that attention away from the fourth house, put it more into siblings and community, potentially communication and so on. But then it will come back as of about the holiday season, when you're going to find Jupiter coming back into that place. And so giving you probably a lot more of a boost in terms of being active, being supportive, as Jupiter will go quickly through that house until mid-May. And then moves into the very wonderful fifth house for you in the spring. So all these pressures that you may have been experiencing show a bit of promise in the spring. Hang in there. It's a difficult winter for everyone. And I know that you're a Capricorn and you're used to challenges. You're up for it. So I don't worry for you. And I'll be back to explain a little bit more in the next video. Bye for now, Capricorn. Aquarius, this is happening in your 10th house of career and ambition and the fruits of your ambition and the sort of the results of your goals in life. And this is very much to do with how you are in the world around you, outside in the world. And something's changing there quite dramatically for you. This is the point of the eclipse there with Venus as well, suggests this could be around relationships, or it can be around potential for what you value in terms of what you do out in the world. And maybe that's changing quite dramatically now. You feel that there's a need to change that up, and now you're going much more towards the sense of what you need personally. This North Node in the fourth house of your emotional life and your psychological life is probably drawing you in that direction as well, saying, maybe you have been neglecting what you need emotionally, psychologically, because of the work that you're doing or because of the role that you're playing in the world. And now you really need to step back from that. Either that comes by choice from your own decision, or it's coming from the events around you that cause you to need to reflect on that. And either way, this axis is very prominent for you for quite some time. This has been with the nodal axis being in your 10th and 4th house of outer life compared to inner life, in the home or out of the home, in your heart or out in society. This is something of a theme for you between January of 2022 and July of 23. So it's not a, you don't have to sort this out by next week. This is something that will take some time, and it will change you quite dramatically, because it is in one of the most prominent axes of your chart. With Uranus going through the 4th house, that's been changing for sure. Your sense of psychology, your inner life, your emotional life, your sense of self, feeling good in your skin, may have been shaken up quite a lot since the spring of 2018. Now, Uranus is considered the modern ruler of Aquarius. I tend to work with the traditional rulers, and I'll talk about Saturn in a moment. But since Uranus is going to feature very prominently in the next eclipse, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about that. So join that next video to learn more about that. Equally, this Uranus is squaring your 1st house. So something's going on between you, or what you're desiring, how you are in the world, what you expect from your life and your activities in the world, and this placement, what's in your heart, how's that going psychologically, how's that going in terms of where you live, and the settings, the sort of circumstances of your life. And having Uranus in the 4th house is quite destabilizing. It's something that can be very disrupting, both in the sense of maybe you're moving around a lot, not feeling grounded, or it can be in the sense of just even physically staying in the same place, but feeling not at all happy in your skin, not at all in a good place, because there's so much churning inside. I think you'll find that if you start to resolve this question, or if the question is somehow resolved for you around these eclipses, what do I do in the world? How do I do it? How am I happy with what's going on in the world? What needs to change in that regard? I think that will go a long way to helping you resolve this inner turmoil that you might be going through. Saturn, your ruler, has been in your 1st house since December 2020. That's quite a change already in itself. It's really about reestablishing yourself in the world. It's about getting quite serious about yourself, and maybe having a sense of a stronger sense of purpose and drive in your life. It can also feel like a restriction on yourself. So Saturn in the 1st house can just have you feel like it's a bit of a struggle to be yourself, and you're still maybe having to work that through. But I think now that the retrograde is ending, Saturn has slowed down, and just at the time of this eclipse, a couple of days before, it's now moving direct after months of being retrograde. I think you're going to find a bit of a breakthrough there. You're going to find that that resolves itself. And then you're able to move forward forcefully. This is your ruler. That Saturn works really well with Aquarius. It's putting a lot of structure in the way that you think. Aquarius is very cutting edge, very sort of intellectual, scientific, and that is right up the alley of Saturn. It's just the perfect match for organizing all of that desire for change, organizing the desire for something to be different in a way that's constructive and moving forward. So I think this can actually ultimately be very, very beneficial for you, Aquarius. And I think you'll find that if there may be a shock coming from the eclipse, that it might, it actually can be very inspiring. It could be something that shows you, wow, I didn't realize that about the potential that I have, or the job that I have, or the thing that I could do. I never saw it like that before. And it's just now, boom, something's changed. So if there is something that you're shedding right now, especially in terms of your status, whether that be a job or even a potential love relationship, take that as something that you can really work with, and really recognize there's a bigger picture going on here for you. When Saturn goes in the first house, you're starting a whole new 28, 29 year cycle. You're in a very fresh place in terms of where you're establishing your life for the long term. So don't dwell too much on shifts that are happening now. Know that things are very fluid, very flexible at the moment. Aquarius is very fixed. It's a fixed energy, and also your 10th and 4th houses are also fixed energy. So there may be some stubbornness there. There may be a resistance to this change, but it will bring you an enormous amount of benefits. You have Jupiter in your 3rd house. Chiron is there too. There may have been a lot of attention, a lot of issues around siblings. Chiron has been there since May of 2018. That can include cousins as well, and your neighborhood and what's around you, who's around you, communications and so on. But Jupiter in there has probably put an enormous amount of energy in that zone of your life. That can also be about learning new skills, learning how to communicate better. Writing is also implicated there, especially because also you've had just recently Mercury going through your 9th house. Jupiter will move back into your 2nd house, which is about money and self-esteem. So it looks like things can pick up for you between now and December. And then from December onwards, Jupiter will be back in the 3rd house, but I'll speak about that in a future video. Mars is in your 5th house, and that's in a trine to Aquarius. And so Gemini and Aquarius are air signs in a trine with Mars there in your 5th house. That can have you very dynamic in terms of creativity, very dynamic in terms of relationships as well, love affairs, for example, fun things, enjoying life, having fun. And so that Mars is a very long transit. It's something that's going back and forth and back and forth. So something is brewing there that is also transformational. These retrogrades and the slower moving planets that are changing signs as we go into the spring are all speaking to an enormous amount of big change in the world and in our lives. So roll with it. Enjoy this opportunity with Mars in the 5th to express yourself in different ways, get involved in creative projects, and perhaps even around commerce and business, and maybe how you want to work in your day-to-day life. This can also be an educational house that can be about students, for example. And because it's trining, it's going to give you a lot of energy. So even if you've been a bit bogged down by that Saturn, Mars is going to give you quite a lot of energy between now and the end of March. So good luck with all of that, Aquarius, and I will see you in the next video. Pisces, this eclipse is happening in your 9th house, and that's actually a trine from you. So it's quite a nice energy. It's something that I think can be, again, depending on your natal chart, it can be quite harmonious. It can be quite helpful for you because it's going to align in a favorable way with yourself. Now, obviously, Pisces is extremely mutable. You have this capacity to go with the flow. And so you're not really too uncomfortable when things shift very quickly. And again, that depends on the rest of your chart. You may only have one placement in Pisces and all the rest in fixed signs. That would be a very different type of person. But the typical Piscean energy is very easygoing, very easy to go with the flow. And with the South Node in the 9th house, there can be a new sense of orientation in life. That's the house of dharma, the purpose. What am I here for? I may be having to reflect differently on that. I may be wanting to look for, where am I studying? How am I studying? Am I learning new things? Do I want to do the thing that I'm doing, or should I let that go and move on in different directions? So there's going to be some elements of ideas here. That can also be within a project. If you are a student, for example, or you're doing research, this can be within the context of the project. Now, some idea that you've been pursuing is like, no, not that anymore. And now you move in a different direction. It can equally be that your spiritual or philosophical viewpoint is shifting, that there may be a sense of maybe having been a particular way, doing things one way for your own spiritual practice, and now realizing I don't need to do that anymore. It's not really who I am. It doesn't resonate any longer. And so it's about really becoming more practical overall. This is part of that energy between January of 2022 and July of 2023. So for Pisces in general, it's about, can I make this more practical? Can I get this more grounded in my life, rather than being more in the realm of ideas? So this is the time now to become much more practical, establish yourself in the real world, as it were. This is also Saturn going through the 12th house is potentially doing that as well. It's showing you perhaps where escapism has not really been a good modus operandi. It may be something that you've been doing over the years to avoid work or avoid issues. And with Saturn in the 12th house, it's becoming uncomfortable. That becomes really uncomfortable. And so it requires a certain amount of restriction. Saturn actually does really, really well in the 12th house because it puts some kind of structure, some kind of framework on the sort of more ephemeral, mystical things of life. And so it's really welcome there. It's really helpful there. So you have this right through till March. So this is a great opportunity to have yourself grounded in something much more real. Jupiter has been doing the same. Jupiter moving through the 2nd house, making things much more real. Now, Jupiter in the 2nd, everybody says, oh, that's lots of money. It can also be lots of expenses. So Jupiter is big. The 2nd house is about money. It's about investing. It's about wealth. It's about what you have. And it can also mean that you spend way more. It can be spending for a good cause. It might be investments, but certainly there's some issue around money, values, self-worth for Pisces, because Chiron is also there, and it's been there since the spring of 2018. It will continue to be there for at least another 2 or 3 years. So there's quite a long period of time, no, even longer, 3 or 4 years. It's been quite a long time that Chiron is there, getting you used to this new way of valuing things, including yourself. Now, Jupiter is moving back into your 1st house really briefly. That will happen at the end of the month. I'll speak more about that with the next video. But briefly, as Jupiter goes into your 1st house, it's giving you a lift. It's giving you a boost now in terms of your self-esteem that you may have, or just a sense of new possibilities that you may have kind of questioned or abandoned since the spring. And that's coming back for a second review, a second opportunity. And so use this opportunity as well to revise plans that may have come up for you in March and April, maybe even May, and have a sense of, what was realistic, what was working. You might find people coming back into your experience, or projects for work, etc., or issues around where do I live coming back into your frame of reference. And that will start to clarify after Christmas. You have Mars in the 4th house, so there can be quite a lot of agitation around where you live, how you feel about where you live, and that can be within the home as well. The Mars within the home makes it a very, very busy place, a lot going on, and that can also have potential for conflict as well within the home. Again, that would depend on your natal chart. That depends on many, many things. It's not a generalized, it can't really be generalized. That's the flaw with these kinds of general readings. But with Mars in the 4th house, certainly we can see that there can be some inner frustration, a sense of maybe frustration, not feeling really happy with life, or not feeling fully into what's going on in your life right now, frustration emotionally or psychologically. This is going to it'll be sort of slowed down, let's say, back for review, if you like, as of the end of the month, when Mars goes retrograde again. And then it'll be another 2.5 months before Mars goes direct. But in that process, you can really start to do some soul searching and really use that energy of Mars in the 4th and Saturn in the 12th to get you clear on what's happening behind the eyes, as it were. What's going on in my life? Am I in a good place? Do I need maybe a new perspective on my life, or how I'm feeling? When Mars starts to go direct, you're going to start to feel that resolve. It will come back in a way that can be much more constructive if you've done the homework in the meantime. So Pisces, have a great eclipse, and I look forward to talking to you in the next video. Thanks for listening, everybody. I appreciate your support. Thanks for all of your likes and comments, and do subscribe because it really helps me expand the channel. And if you have any questions or there's things that you would like me to cover in a video, do put that down in a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Bye.